Hey guys, peace. So, hope you guys are well. Uh, we've been having what I call earthquake weather here in Southern California, and that's when it gets sweltering hot. And my goodness, you can't get any hotter than this. But it sort of goes along with, a lot of the stuff. um, I used to talk about radiation or radiant heat, which is the type of heat we've been having over the last several years or so. And it just kind of feels like a bit of radiation. Um, and I mean, when I say radiation, I don't know, some other people, I don't know, they tell me at some point, like, it's like a galactic heat that's coming from deeper in our galaxy. It's not just our sun. But it's like the type of heat that, like if you have an incubator and you have animals inside the little incubator or aquarium or whatever, and you put a certain type of light on there, and it, and excuse me, not animals, but eggs. And then what it does is it starts, throat chakra, it starts, heating up the eggs, agitating them so that they get ready to hatch. That's what it feels like. It feels like codes, right? But yeah, so I went to the beach early this morning. I took a my goodness, I don't know why my throat is like this, but anyway, I went to the beach early this morning to watch the sunrise, and oh my God, I got there at about a little after 6 o'clock, and there were so many people there, like compared to normal. I mean, usually there are surfers and a few people, but I think because of the heat, a lot of people, got up and came, and it was the most amazing. I mean, the outdoors was so vivid, and it's a trip because a few days ago I had just noticed how gray and dingy it was, and I was like, wow, remember when it used to be a lot like brighter, right? And not like smog bright, but like more vivid colors, right? So it was amazing this morning. It was amazing, nothing short of amazing. And this was after going to sleep last night and sweating the whole night with the air on. The colors were vivid. I said that. The tide was really high. I said that earlier. People were so friendly and so chatty and so kind and so happy. And the sun was so bright. And the birds. And oh my God, I saw a dolphin. This dolphin was swimming and jumping. And just, I mean, I used to see, I remember it was like, oh Lord, I can't remember the year, but it was somewhere around 2016. It was around 2016 that I saw dolphin in the ocean swimming and playing. It was that kind of a day. And it led me to believe that it's like a portal that's been opened. Let me tell you what I mean in a minute, because I'm going to try to touch on several things. I hope I can make it through. So like I said, I made notes, lots of notes. So I hope I stay focused. But I think the theme that I sort of wanted to touch on was kind of along the lines of what is spirituality? What do we mean when we say spiritual? Like, what is that, right? Because it's come to mean all kinds of things now. People say spiritual, and a while ago we had to bring up the fact that when you say spiritual, you're also talking about, shadow entities, right? You're also talking about jinns and demons and what have you. So spiritual isn't just something that is physical. And it really hasn't been that long since it's been a huge, it might have been, has it been post-pandemic that spirituality has been a woke item, a woke agenda item? And if so, that's not an accident. It's not an accident because where the anti-Christic crowd is trying to take us, they're going to need that concept of spirituality and being spiritual to help sell what it is that they're trying to get us to, connect to, which is, their whole false, archonic metaverse. And so that's the other thing I want to talk about. But I want to talk about the internal metaverse versus the external metaverse that they have, shopped or promoted to us as part of their AI clone synth agenda, right? Their metaverse is a 3D metaverse that they want to capture and kidnap and hijack us to willingly move into, like a Pied Piper tune to get us to go. They've already propped us with anime, cartoon, video game type VR, virtual reality, right? So, everybody's been avataring and caricatured apropos my cartoon filter or comic filter. So for a while now, they've been getting us ready for the world of the external metaverse, right? So I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But first I want to talk about, again, what's been sort of going on lately. The last few days, I would say since Virgo moon. And then as Virgo hit, we've had a lot of, and it's funny because Virgo represents taking a deeper look at everything, like analyzing the hell out of everything, right? Including the self. Virgos are really good at going into the self as much, if not more, than others in the external world. So, the fact that we would have this, what I'm calling hyperspace or hyperdimensional space, and it's kind of brought this like psychedelic type texture. Matter of fact, I went to the museum a couple of days ago and I just had a wonderful time. And I did a sound bath. They had a sound bath there that was really weird. Actually, the sound bath, it kind of sounded like interdimensional, extraterrestrial. I don't know. It kind of sounded a little weird, actually. So I wasn't all into the voices they used, but it took me to that place that I had already been sort of moving toward since earlier this week when I did this meditation that I quickly talked about in one video a few days ago. But yeah, it's been kind of like a psychedelic thing. The colors I've noticed. For me, I took some photographs, and the colors were blue and purple, like an ultraviolet purple. I'm gonna give my link to my Instagram. I'm just now reconnecting with my Instagram, where I have more of a photography project, and you can see because I'm a shapeshifter, so the theme is sort of like the shadow self, which is another Virgo, because for two reasons: moving into self-analysis, going deep into the self, and looking at alchemizing the duality within and perfecting it, another Virgo thing. So taking the duality, putting it together, and creating an alchemical, polarity balance in order to attain some form of perfection. That's a Virgo thing. Very Virgo. Also along with the magician, which is a Virgo thing. So the astrology aspect of what is going on can be very helpful in understanding, understanding, or just sort of playing with the idea of, the energies that we're mastering at the moment. So the psychedelic stuff, the colors, the purple, the blue, also connects with this thing I've been on, which is, this light is tripping, which is like a fairy, elven kingdom type thing. And this came up before the ring. What is it called? It's the ring that Lord of the Rings. No, is it Lord of the Rings? Yeah, Lord of the Rings. I don't know. Is it a prequel? But anyway, I did watch one episode the other night, but this was that was like a synchronicity. It was like a verification of the energy that was already flying through. And then, once you get on something, it just starts popping up and popping up. So I started bumping into stuff where people were talking about fairies, the Fae Kingdom, and the other prequel of the dragon, the dragon, what is it called? Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it. But you guys know what I'm talking about. So both of those shows are out, and they're both dealing with the same themes. It can't be a coincidence. I think it's happening purposely for a reason. Um, Rainbows, the chakra. I'm not even into chakras, but I happened to buy this like a month ago out of the blue. I'm not even into chakras. I kind of don't believe in all the hype that people get into. I mean, I know that they exist, but I don't think you're supposed to focus on them as much as people focus on them, right? But I bought like a mala, and that was part of my whole like Buddhist thing that I was tripping off of. And yeah, I've been like wearing the mala. I don't have it on right now, but I've been wearing it. So anyway, you guys get it. Rainbow, and I've been seeing rainbows, like rainbows within light and rainbows within like, I don't know, just prisms of rainbows just sort of appearing all over the place. So it's leading me to believe, oh, and then also I've been into, well, today, this was just today. This light is really tripping. I'm sorry. Today I got into the essential oils of bergamot and cedar. And the cedar is part of the juniper family. All of a sudden, my favorite trees, the redwoods, I've mentioned this in other videos, my favorite things in the world, the redwoods, California coastal redwoods. They've been popping up on my Facebook feed until I don't even know how that happened. But, well, we all know that there's some kind of algorithm going on with Facebook, right? And all these other social media platforms. But some group that is literally called the Redwood Forest Group or something like that, they started popping up and showing me all these amazingly gorgeous redwood shots, which make me want to jump in my car and go drive up the coast to the redwood forest. So what I'm trying to say is synchronicity has been a real element of whatever's going on as well. It's so hot. It's my jam. So I've come up with the fact that it's some kind of hyperspace shift that we've been on. I don't know if CERN is responsible for this, but I really don't want to give CERN the credit. I really think it has to do with our own solar system, galactic system, something. I think it's happening within the Earth and the galaxy that we're doing some, and I feel like there are codes that are being uploaded into us. That's how it feels. And again, what perfect season than Virgo season for all this to happen? Because Virgo is the magician, the hermit, the witch, the recluse. The Capricorn's a little more reclusive, some at times. Okay, so also, I just found out today that NASA canceled one of their moon launches today because there was some kind of mishap. That was interesting. With regard to the sound bath, that was interesting because it reminded me also of the magic of sound frequency. And I always like to use the example of the Bene Gesserit on Dune and how they had, what was it called, the Weirding Way or something like that, where they used their voices to control things, from a telekinetic, what is that called when you use sound, cymatics, telekinetic type of dynamic, but it went deeper because they went into like controlling people's thoughts, reading people's minds um, telepathically, but also making people do, you know, what they wanted, bending their will through their voice, through their throat chakra, which is interesting. Okay, so I'm all over the place and I haven't really gotten started. I don't know what time it is. 20 minutes. Okay, let's see. Segue to, oh, and the stone that has been in my holograph for the last few weeks has been obsidian, which also has been urging or bringing up mirror magic. I'm not, okay, I don't know if I want to give you guys my background because that was going to be a whole nother tangent. But I don't really do magic anymore. I'm not into casting. I'm not into intentional magic. If I do magic, a lot of times it'll be as a result of my whole system. I used to. I, you know, it's not like I'm not aware or versed in it. I've just evolved beyond using the knowledge of the three-dimensional realm to wield my will or intention over the natural order. If that happens, generally it's because it's like autonomous and it's like a result of self-defense, or you know, it's last resort, and it's still not, it's last resort, but I've kind of moved on, and my code is that I don't really sit and do, you know, that kind of magic. I'm into alchemy, which I can explain because alchemy has a lot of different definitions. But my definition of alchemy is a lot broader, again, than what I see or hear from other people or even have learned in the past. Again, the intentionalization of rule breaking for the purpose of satisfying one's egoistic desires, to me, is sort of a forbidden thing at the level that when I say level, I'm not trying to be, you know, lofty. I'm just sharing that, you know, the stages never stop. I mean, they can for some people. Some people might find a particular practice and do that for life. And that's the way, really, we used to do things for a very long time, up until even this, you know, particular era. Whether it was, you hear a lot of Buddhists talk about nowadays, or monks, or Indian masters, or Singh, you know, Sikh masters, about how prior to this lifetime, people would spend several lifetimes meditating just to get to one level, you know. But things have been sped up in this particular lifetime or level. That, I mean, you know, era that we're in. This quantum era. Everything is, you know, much more quick. So, you know, it's not necessary anymore, as far as I'm concerned, to practice something and be stuck on that, and pledge allegiance to. I mean, it's acceptable if that's what you want to do, or if that's what you're on, but there's no limit in that anymore. And I learned that a long time ago. They taught me that a long time ago, and I'm sticking to it. And again, it's never about telling you what to do. It's about letting you know what is possible, and then you get to make your choice. Some people want to, I practice everything. I go through different phases of practicing something very deeply. I'll go through a Christian phase. Got my Coptic Ethiopian cross on right now. I've really been vibing that lately. But yeah, I've been into Abrahamic energy since I've gone. I told you guys about my trip to Jordan last summer. And, the gin there. I went into this, oh my God, it was an incredible mosque while we were in Amman, and it was just an amazing experience. Trying to get to Tibet. And I've been to Japan a couple years ago. And the Buddhist in me comes alive, the Hindu in me comes alive. So what I'm trying to say is you can, I'm a shapeshifter too. So you can move, through whatever you need to move through. There's no need for you to, pledge and that's not to say that when you are expressing that particular path that you're not all in. Yeah, you could be all in, but you don't have to feel like, I'm in this deeply and devoutly for the rest of my life. I mean, it can be devoutly, but it can be deep inside. So anyway, much too long on that. The point is, I've been on this shadow energy balance because I was really going hard on the light for a very long time recently, and I had to do that because I was in an era and I was around people who had a lot of shadow that my empath had picked up. And oh my gosh, I really wanted to talk about this. In the process of polarity balance, or in on that path, if as you run into, which you typically will, you run into a shadow initiation, as I did. And you end up being around people who have a lot of shadow. And I was actually expressing as an empath and developing and evolving the empath within my template for the last, I want to say 10 years. And I went through some really challenging periods via relationships. But everything's a relationship, whether it's with family or romantic or whatever. And what it did is it pulled out a lot of shadow in me, because that's what it does, especially when you're an empath and an alchemist. Because the point of an alchemist is not to avoid shadow, it's to go into it. It's like Smith in the Matrix, and you don't always go into it. Some people are, what do you call that? Like people who like to do, jumping off of airplanes and stuff. My sister does that. Daredevils and whatever. Some people we don't walk into it with our eyes wide open, and then sometimes we do. There have been times when I've walked into shadow initiations with my eyes wide open. But I don't know if they were totally open, because if they were totally open, I probably wouldn't have walked into it. But the point is, at the soul level, as an alchemist, you walk into shadow energy situations because the point is to embrace them, consciously or unconsciously, and then to work with that energy and to balance it, right? So how do you balance it? When you're mirroring a shadow energy, an entity, their whole purpose in life is to pull you down to their level. And this sounds very, social wisdom, right? But it's way beyond that. Because, the self has higher and lower, right? Because that's part of the duality, just like everything else. So when you're dealing with the shadow energy, the point of the shadow, and we can look at it from the myth of Lucifer, as I always love to do. I love the myth of Lucifer. The point is to, because we're dealing with, let's deal with the Abrahamic religions. You're dealing with forces of good and evil. And the evil wants to win souls over to its side, right? So what better way to do that? It's not just about tormenting you. It's about the tormenting is part of the process too, because if you're tormented and you begin to live a life of fear or anger or bitterness or depression and sadness, that's shadow, right? So it could be that way that the shadow entities seek to have victory over you or to pull you in. But it also can be just getting you to fight back. Just getting you to think about and be consumed, with the fight. And that's another topic. I was writing about, because I remember I never liked martial arts when I was young. I didn't like martial arts until I got older. I was in a relationship with someone who was a martial artist, but he didn't really do martial arts. I don't think that was the reason, unless he was a karmic or whatever, so maybe I picked up, empathically, just like he did for me. Different, template traits and paths. But Bruce Lee, what I discovered when I was kind of going over it, now I'm can't wait to take a martial arts class. And this is part of my shapeshifter, I tell people this, as of, 7 or 8 years ago. And again, it probably was something I picked up from the person I was in a relationship with who was a martial artist. But I bought, I mentioned this before, I still have, bokens, and I really love swords and blades. My past life memory of that, totally kicked in. I have a lot of Aries in my chart. Actually, I have a whole lot of fire in my chart. And I used to just do this, as part of my shapeshifter. I used to just do this every now and then, not every day. I would break out and just do these, extemporaneous choreographed sword stuff, and it was it's amazing because, I'm being all extra for you guys and all dramatic, but it would just come out, it would just flow, just like other things like dancing or, and that's something I've been trying to bring to people too. I know many of you already know this, but we have all of this inside of us. And it's not like you're one thing in your lifetime. Like you go to school and you learn how to, you learn about finance, or you learn how to play an instrument, or you learn to dance, or you learn to sing, and then that's all you do. Like, you dedicate. No. And people think that that's the way it's supposed to be done. Like, you're supposed to focus and concentrate and really hone in on your craft, and then be, I mean, you can do that, but I'm saying again, just like the religious paths or philosophical or spiritual paths, you're not limited to that. There's this one book when I was young that my uncle, who was my mentor, rest in peace, introduced me to, and it's called, it's by Richard Bach. I think I've spoken about this on another video, but Richard Bach wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Some of you had to read that in high school if you're old school. But he wrote another book called Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. Couldn't have been any more than 14 or 15 when I read that book. And it just blew my mind away. One of the things he basically said, I'm sorry, I had a little bit of wild rice earlier, is it was something like, it was a maxim, and it was something like, we give ourselves permission only after we've toiled over something. We give ourselves permission to say, okay, now I can do this. Again, totally contrived law that was given to us by who knows who. I could go back and research it for you, but I really don't feel like wasting my time and energy. You can go research it yourself, but it's not true, especially in a quantum world. Again, so many of us have been introduced to this idea of quantum, and we subscribe. But we haven't quite integrated it with our theory of everything yet. It's like, we believe in quantum. Quantum is this and that. And there are no rules. And it's parallel universe theory. And it's, anything can happen. And, and then we go back to, but in the real world, in 3D, we go back to the rules and the hierarchy of, what can and cannot be done. And it's like, it's such a contradiction. And again, it's just because we haven't integrated it. I mean, I do the same thing, because it's not about individuals. It's about a collective, morphogenetic, consciousness that we all share. Okay. So what was I saying? Richard Bach, Illusions, Balancing Shadow Energy, Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's form of martial arts that he created, his last sort of major contribution before he died, was called, I always forget it, but I wrote it down, because I always think it's Aikido, but it's not. It's Jun Ki. What is it called? Jun Ki. Some of you know. Jeet Kune Do. Jeet Kune Do. And I remember when I first came across that several years ago, and I was like, whoa. Like, not the martial arts itself, but the philosophy. Because Bruce Lee was super deep. Bruce Lee, like I said, I didn't like martial arts when I was younger. But once I got mature enough to understand the philosophy behind a lot of martial arts, I really fell in love with it, And once I learned about Taoism and became more familiar with the inner machinations, the mystic path of Buddhism, then I began to appreciate martial arts a whole lot more, and I saw it from a different perspective. And this was way back before anime was, I always say anime. Somebody told me that a rapper did a song where he did that, where he said, he used that Jay-Z, eat the cake, anime. I always want to bust out on some kind of corny joke when I say anime. Okay, sorry. But anyway, the quote was the no, it's not a quote. It's the definition of jeet is the art of fighting without fighting. And what he did quote is, he called it the formless form. And I submit that this goes back to one of my major themes in general that I proselytize, which is ego dissolution. And that Bruce Lee had gotten there at the end of his life, which happens with most people, but not anymore because we're breaking all the rules. We don't have to go through a whole life of, again, doing all this path work and then, boom, we get our enlightenment right before we die. No, we're getting it now. It's accelerated. That was the simple word I was looking for. We're in an accelerated time based on the quantum nature of our current evolution, right? The Mayan, time is done with. And they pulled us into a few black holes by now. Everybody knows that. And they're ripping new ones, probably daily with CERN. But the point is that so my whole approach to dealing with shadow energy as a form of alchemy is, to master not being pulled into that. And so I was talking about why I don't do conscious magic, or I try not to. It's a mastery for me because I did at one time and I did in past lifetimes. And my manifestation game has been pretty good. Even accidentally in this lifetime. And so I'll just put it out there because a lot of you have gone through this and there's no reason for me to hide it. I just don't like to shout out people who are going to be watching my video who I'm about to talk about. And I don't even need to say or know their names or faces. But a lot of us have been going through, attacks. They've got all kind of sophisticated group stuff going on, and I told you guys the origin of some of this. Not the origin, because this stuff goes back forever. And a lot of people have family attachments, shadow entity attachments from a lot of trauma. And it's their ancestors that are stacking this shadow entity, on them and making them, not making them, but because everybody has a choice. But a lot of people just grow up thinking that it's okay to be predators on other people's energy, to want to sacrifice other people, especially people who they think are weak, right? And then they get big surprises, right? But, in this post-millennial era, having been introduced to concepts of magic through Harry Potter as kids and all kinds of other stuff, or all these sci-fi movies and stuff that a lot of y'all millennials watched as kids, everybody wants to do that. And then couple that with the suffering of, the whole urban hip-hop era where everybody wants to, everybody wants to be a thug, and process their pain through, shoot them up, kill them, hurt other people so you can feel better, narcissism, fuck everybody, it's about me, let me take it out on you because the world has done me wrong. This is the whole, and it's all been contrived. Again, this is not original. And it's so transparent if you're able to really look at it. You can look from all different cultural, paths, religions, and philosophies. I mean, the themes are just, they're so, but I understand if you're a kid and you weren't nobody took the time, and you didn't have an interest yourself, you know, it seems, excitingly novel, but it's not. The point I'm making is when you, this is simple, but it's so simple, people don't get it. When you get pulled down to the level that shadow energy is at by fighting it, then you have lost you've lost. You've lost because they have adopted you. They've initiated you into they're controlling the narrative and the energy by bringing you to their platform, right? And this is why the Christians say, you don't fight hate with hate. You fight hate with love. And I know it's hard because we don't even really, we're still we're learning all these things as we go. So we don't even know what love is. We're learning what love is, like a download, like on the Matrix. What is love? That's not love. That's not love. Is that love? Oh, that's love. Oh, that's not love. While we're in this bigger game of shadow versus, I hate light, but you know what I'm trying to say. And so what you do is, you don't become a pushover. I did that for a while, but I was balancing out some karma. So, some of us, even unconsciously, consciously, we know what we're doing. It may look like we're being stepped on and whatever, but some of us, we know later that is part of our contract to go through that, either to understand what the energy is like for the rest of the template. Because again, if you don't know, like somebody else telling you, I know your pain, but they never walked a day in your shoes. Like, you don't really know my pain. You know it intellectually, but you don't know it. So some starseeds, earthseeds, avatars, whatever, have come to experience things so that it's like Christ again, or I won't call him Christ because that's a title, but the mythological personage of Jesus, Yeshua. The whole point was for him to experience this human, this human path so that, he could relay it back and, overcome through his avatar work. For all of us, for everybody, supposedly. So yeah, alchemy, genuine alchemy is about dealing with the shadow and the light, quote unquote. I don't like the term light. Shadow I'm cool with, but I don't like light. Darkness is a different type of word because you have good darkness, good. You have different types of darkness, just like you have different types of light. You have artificial light, which Lucifer represents, phosphorescent light, ego light, and then you have, it's just like you have electricity light and you have natural sunlight, right? So one is less authentic than the other, so to speak. Same with darkness. You have the darkness that is 97% of our universe, that makes up everything that light comes from. And that when light is done, when a planet or star is done burning, it returns to darkness. That's the good darkness, right? Quote unquote. And then you have the quote unquote bad darkness, where people imbalance themselves to be in a void that is based on a fear and a separation, or a desire to separate from the wholeness of, the totality of non-polarity, non-binary, if you will. Although that term's been used for gender issues. Anyway, I think you guys get what I'm saying. So I'm saying the true, not true, I don't like that. But you know, the alchemist of a certain sort works with both shadow and light. And they come to understand that you don't fight your enemy. So the whole thing of this whole time I wasn't even recording on that. The whole point of Bruce Lee's what is it called? Jeet Kune Do is that it's so tight. Look at this. Instead of throwing a punch or whatever, it's not a punch. You know, you guys know what I'm talking about in martial arts. Instead of fighting your opponent, you let the energy of your quote unquote opponent imbalance them so that they end up, throwing themselves off balance, and you never have to deliver a strike. So, in other words, you let their energy fight or imbalance them and defeat them. You don't have to stoop to the level. It's really exciting. I'm not explaining it as exciting as it is, but look it up. Look it up. So like I said, when I first learned about it, again, I wasn't so interested in the actual martial arts style because I wasn't really interested in martial arts like that. But the philosophy of it was so deep. And I took it and used it and applied it to my theory of everything because it made perfect sense. You don't imbalance yourself fighting shadow energy. That's what they want you to do, to come over to their side. Instead, you go in, well, I'll tell you what I do, or my mastery, not that I've gotten there 100%, because sometimes, people, energies will catch you off guard, or you've had enough, and you'll strike out. And in those moments, I'm telling you, that's when you've lost your power. And yeah, you might get them, but they're like, ha, got you, ha. And I've seen it in myself before, because I have shadow, and I recall times when I was acting out of my ego, and I was like provoking somebody, provoking them, and they ignored me, and then, that one provoke, they just like, and I was like, it's like what little kids do, right? To feel powerful, because our ego is a little kid. So anyway, that's a form of alchemy that I prefer to practice. Something I had written about Native Americans, shape-shifting, water purification. Water has been a big theme. Because we're almost coming up on an hour, and I haven't gotten to this question of what is spiritual. What does spiritual mean? What's a definition of spiritual? Okay, so I'm gonna make this one really quick because I have this written as a note. Oh gosh, I have two things I need to. Well, no, the last one would be spiritual, but okay. So one of my major themes, which has been a theme of my lifetime, is getting people to look at, the deconstruction and dissolution ultimately, if not in this lifetime, of ego, which is the self, but it's the false self, right? Oh my gosh. And I wrote this essay. I told you guys the other day, and this is getting too long. I can't have these long videos, so I'll have to come back, and I'd like to, maybe I can just come on and just read the essay, and then that's it. and then talk about it another time. But anyway, the dissolution of self, the ego. Oh gosh, I really want to read that because it was about how ego is a clone of the self. Oh, I wrote it here. So ego is a clone, a robot, a replica, or an extraction of the whole self. And the other thing I posted this week, another synchronicity, was I said in another video earlier this week that I stumbled across the really badly reviewed, I think it's called Little Buddha, with Keanu Reeves playing the flashback version of Buddha. And there's this one scene, and if I put my Instagram link for you guys to see it, but it's or you can go watch it. It's a scene where he, as Siddhartha, is tested by Mara, who's like the shadow entity, like Lucifer testing Jesus, because it's the same mythology, right? Or it's, I won't say it's the same, because you know how these conscious people love to tell you that Yeshua wasn't real, you know, but then they'll tell you if they're Muslim, Prophet Muhammad was real, or he'll have all these mystical attributes. And again, nothing against any of these religions, because I'm into, you know, or they'll tell you that Buddha was real, or somebody else will tell you that this was real, but that, you know, it's always like one, you know, it's like they can all be real, and it can all be, you know, looping, you know, mythologies that occur in different cultures, just like different languages we speak. Like everybody's experiencing it in their own way, you know? So anyway, it's just like the whole thing with Yeshua being tempted by Satan in the wilderness, right? But it's so cold because the last test he gets is a test of this mirror reflection of him that appears. And this reflection, I said this in the other video, so I don't need to go over it again. But he basically says, you know, he's like imagine you looking at yourself after all this meditation, and you pass all these different tests on your way to enlightenment, and yourself appears to you and says, this is the quote. You have gone where no one else will go. You know, so he's basically gassing him up. Like, you're so strong, and you're so brave, and you're so this, and you're so that. You're so amazing. It's when people get their spiritual egos going, right? And they let the shadow of themselves, their ego, tell themselves how spiritual and holy you are. You have done such great work, and you do this, and you meditate, and you do yoga, and you help people, and you do, right? Same thing. Or whatever it is your thing is that your ego wants to appreciate, you know, tell you that you're amazing for. And then, check this out. He says, will you be my God? The ego says that to the self. So Keanu Reeves, who, by the way, I've been a Keanu Reeves fan forever. Like, I'm a diehard Keanu Reeves, and not just the actor, but the person, right? I follow him, and I don't really follow celebrities, but if I had a celebrity, he's one of a very short list. And check out his name. Did y'all ever check out Keanu Reeves' name? You know, I think he's Hawaiian. His mom's European, but his father's like Hawaiian or something like that. Anyway, Kune. Anu. Anybody who's into Kemet, Ki, Anu. Ki is an Ankh, Anu, the Anu people that come from the Anunnaki. Ki, Anu. Isn't that deep? Anyway, don't get me started. So, what was I saying? Oh, the ego. So, Keanu Reeves' character, or Siddhartha, says, O Lord of my ego, you are nothing but an illusion. Something like that. And then he puts his hand down on the earth and he says, the earth is my witness. And all of a sudden, the mirror image, that's him, shapeshifts and shapeshifts into Mara, the shadow self. Oh Lord, what did I just do? I just closed that file. What the heck? See? Okay, it's okay. Okay, and disappears. And that's the end of the test. So basically, Siddhartha calls his ego out and lets him know, don't even try it. Don't even try it. Because you're not real. You're an illusion. You're not God with a big G. You are as a separate distinction. You are, that's what gets on my nerves so much when people want to push this, you're God, you're God. You're only God as a connection. You're only God as a collective, right? Or as a connection to everything actually, because everything is God. So you don't need to appreciate yourself or worship yourself as God. That's the ego. That's the ego gassing you up, right? And the fall of that ego is what has gotten us in trouble and that we've been trying to, rise from as part of the game ever since. The whole Luciferian rebellion of the ego separating itself from God, distinguishing itself from the whole, from God, falling in love narcissistically with its own expression, right? It's deep. Another time I'll get deeper into that. But, okay, so lastly, at 103, but I did say something about, what is this? Conservation. Oh, conservation. That goes back to the Bruce Lee thing. So the whole point of not fighting, your enemies or, those shadow entities that come to take your energy from you by provoking you. And the jeet kune do, the whole point is conservation of energy, right? You don't need to do all that. It's not necessary. It's a waste. It's a waste for you to get all, to get all, discombobulated and controlled by this predator energy, because that's what they want, your energy. Don't you get it? Your energy is the commodity. All that other stuff is just whatever. It's a game. It's all just a game, of your ego to think that it's more than energy. And so it's like a little kid who needs attention and needs to feed their ego. They don't care if you give them at some point when they're like, when a kid gets like to a point where, they're desperate because they're dysfunctional. That's what I was looking for. They don't care if they get positive attention or negative attention. They don't care. They just want attention. So if they get yelled at, that's cool, because that all is validating their existence, right? And for the entities, it's actually feeding them energy, because your energy is going. As a matter of fact, the angry energy gives more of the essence away. You know, the energy that it takes to harm, to reciprocate harm, that's more energy that they give. But when you just stay in the realization, which is not easy to do, I have not mastered it. When you stay in the realization of truth, not fact, truth, which is love and connectedness, and you use the compassion that has been given to you to understand why these entities do what they do, because they're disconnected, because they don't know what love is. They've traded in the love for fear, and based on that, you know, it's the fear that they're acting out of. Predatory. You know, somebody was asking me about, like, so you don't think that, I don't know what example they used, but let's just say the lion, you know, that lions are predators. And do you think that's, you know, that's natural? And I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. There are mythologies that deal with pre-historical times, where the lion and the lamb lay down together. Leo Tolstoy. Predatory behavior is a result of the imbalance. And that imbalance, and that mythology goes back so long too, that I understand why people would think that it's natural. But it's not. There were times when, you know, and there's a way to get back to that. So being a vampire, being predatory, is not inherent to our nature. It's inherent to shadow nature, based on the fall that's represented by narcissism and Luciferian love of the false self, which creates a natural fear, which then feeds itself. So if you're in fear that you're disconnected and you have a limited amount of energy, then you feel that you've got to take it from other entities so that you won't be empty. But the truth is, there is no empty. But the ones who are stuck in that fear, consciousness, and ignorance, they don't remember that. So they'd rather just take the energy, because that's all they know. That's what they're fed by, their Luciferian shadow entities. But conservation of energy, yeah, you don't have to give your energy up. You don't have to, right? And so, let's see. Ending this out, the real thing that I wanted to talk about was the internal metaverse. And it goes to the meditation that I did the other day on accident, when I was dealing with some internal stuff. And I've never been a big meditator. Well, that's not true. There have been periods when I was a big meditator, and then periods when meditation was not my thing at the moment. And the last few years, meditation hasn't been my thing, but prior to that, it was. So I go in and out. I'm a shapeshifter, and I deal also with whatever energies I'm working with at the time, to do whatever work I'm doing for myself and for the temple. In Christian speak, or any other religious speak, you know, whatever God, Allah, Yahweh, you know, whoever the universe, source, spirit needs me for, right? Because I'm surrendered to that path. Use me. And put as little of my low ego in there as possible. It's there, obviously. It's there, you know. I definitely have, I mean, I would never say I don't have an ego. Of course I do. You know, I struggle with it like everybody else. You know. But we realize that it's a feature of our collective consciousness, and we're working so that we can all shift it together and have a new normal, right? So the internal metaverse, which is the real spiritual realm. What is spiritual? Like, spiritual is, it's not just, you know, some nice word that we use to pit against, you know, the worldliness or the profane of our lives. It's, you know, it's an internal scape. And to get there, you go through a certain initiation. I don't even like that either, because they've made it, it's become so I don't know, it's like secret society shit, you know? But I get it, because you can't move into those spaces, and not like you're forbidden, but that too, because that's what these fools are trying to do now. They're trying to take over, and they can't. So because they can't, they've created the anti-Christic version, what I call anti-Christic. They've created the false version of everything that is true, right? They turn it into a lie by using some of it and then perverting it, and then calling that the real thing, while moving you away from, or making you forget, or, you know, distracting you from understanding or knowing, GNO, the real version of what they're selling. It's like clones again. It's the clone. It's the artificial. It's the same thing. So the inner scape of spirituality, is commonly referred to as mysticism. But again, what is that? Back in the day, that was some woo-woo stuff. Now it's very quantum. You know, what is the non-material world made of? It's become very, not solid, but where, because, the religion of the Western world is science. So nothing's true until science proves it, which is so backwards to me. I never bought that. I played along because in past lifetimes you got burned as a witch, so you learn. But also it's no fun because everybody just calls you crazy. So, I did the whole thing. I told you guys, not bragging, but I got 3 graduate degrees and was headed for a PhD when I said enough. So I played that game. I taught science. So I understand the scientific mind. I understand research. I understand building, logical, sequential, rational, deductive reasoning. I understand it. But I'm here to say that I do not regard it as supreme, or even, I think it's a very low-level form of becoming enlightened, if you will. Oh gosh, I have to wrap this up. So I'm just going to introduce it, and then I'll talk about it in the next video. How about that? So the spiritual realm basically is a hyperspace dimension. You guys know this. This is nothing new. I'm not saying nothing, no big deal. But it's not about hearing it or knowing it. It's about what you do with that, or how you really integrate it into your being so that you live it and not just say it or think it or use it to get to the gate. You want to get past the gate. That's mysticism. And mysticism can never be experienced through the mind. Never. Buddhism will kind of try to teach you that it can. And all the other religions will kind of teach you that you can. But also all of them have, and I know Buddhism is not a religion, so you don't have to tell me that. The point I'm making is true mysticism is the abandonment of as Buddhism teaches, of the ego, of the self as a distinction, as I always say. That's my definition of the ego, self as a distinction versus self as a plurality, as a collective. In which case, true empathy and compassion is a non-brainer, literally is a non-thought, because you become one with everything. Which is where we were headed before social media. Facebook, I always said Facebook was what, or actually MySpace, is what tipped us all off to, preventing us to getting our empathic telepathy. That's where we were headed. Our neural networking that we were all about to develop. Instead, they streamed it into anti-Christic tech, which is why you'll see me say tech is the devil. So again, the spiritual realm, this hyperspace dimension, I was talking in another video about Shambhala and Shangri-La and some of the stories that have been told about how you can't, people trying to reach them but not being able to get there because it's not a three-dimensional place. It's not a three-dimensional place. It's a place that exists at a hyper-dimensional level. And in order to shift into that, you have to actually, sort of initiate so that you can shift into that hyper-dimensional realm. And so it appears when you shift, it's there the whole time. It's here the whole time. Just like we know now that the spiritual dimensions, and some of us who have gifts slip in and out all the time, right? Some don't want to. It's like jumping. We know about that now with parallel universes. Same thing. So the point, though, is that the spiritual realm, or hyperdimensional, hyperspace, is accessed through your mystic evolution. And that can only occur when you've put behind, the exaggerated dependency on logic and the mental. And so I've been working on this project, a book, for many years. And I'm not going to, because people come on here and still, and that's the other thing. I had this friend the other day. I get it too, because it's one of my ego things, I guess, too. But then, I defend it. My ego defends it. Because I've had so many people come and borrow or use. And it'd be cool if you were just coming to do that. But they use it and take it and then monetize it, and act like it was theirs. And so I had a friend the other day, because I was kind of going off at dinner. We were at a dinner party in Santa Barbara, and a friend later, she was like, don't be, the stuff I've said, this goes way back, honey. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. That's my ego. But, she was kind of trying to school me, I guess, with, don't worry about, she sent me a video, and, in case she ever sees this. I'm not dissing you, but because I plan on telling her this myself. We're supposed to have tea this week. And this was a couple weeks ago. She sent me a video, and it's like, the basic video is this Asian guy, and it's really nice and everything. But I did that like 20 years ago. The whole thing of and I get the sampling, the the indigo millennial generations, or sampling works, and sharing. But again, that's not my problem. I don't have no problem with shareware in the intellectual. I have a problem when you share. You don't share it. You take it and you lie and pretend that you came up with it and take credit for it. In the literary world, it's called not copyright infringement. That's a whole nother one. Plagiarism. You're plagiarizing. You need to give credit. Just give credit and say, hey, I got this from this, or hey, I was inspired by this. Use quotations. Damn it. Use, paraphrases and cite your source. So don't come telling me that it's okay to take somebody else's stuff because nothing really belongs to anybody. I'm still on it with that. I was off it for a while, but I'm back on it now. Because again, I see maliciousness. And I see people using that argument. So it's like everything. Until you learn the right way to do it and what to do and not to do, then you need to be told. Because you're not doing it the right way. And you're trying to be sneaky and slick and use other people's stuff and then feed them, a explanation that is, designed for people who are evolved. And you're not if you're stealing it and, again, using it to feed your own ego or to monetize or to make money off of other people's ideas. Shame on you. Shame on you. I said it. Yep, in Virgo season. Okay, so it's at 1:22. So we're going to end this. Next time I'll try my best to start on the spiritual realm because there's really a whole lot. That's where it starts. And it also, again, has to do, or it blends perfectly synchronistically with the energy of fae, fairy, elven, mystical aspects that have been collectively in the three-dimensional manifestations of the culture at the moment. At least, parts of it. But a lot of people I've noticed have been feeling and have been speaking on the same thing. A sort of psychedelic, everybody's into mushrooms now, microdosing mushrooms. I'm sorry, this is my ego. Been there, done that. I got a lot of fire in my chart, so I have to really get on my ego all the time. But been doing plant medicine, ayahuasca for 2 decades now, almost. Not 2 decades, maybe about 15 years. So I'm just never, I'm not impressed, Again, people trend, quote unquote, spirituality in the path. And I'm not necessarily, unimpressed, but I'm not impressed. Because again, when you use all of this for your ego to be into how spiritual you are, that's when you start mucking things up. So the spiritual realms, what are they made of? This is what we'll talk about next time. And the ego, the fall of the ego, because again, you can't really get to these mystical realms until you deal with your ego. Otherwise, you're going to take your ego with you and it's going to lead you in the wrong direction. And you're going to think you're shifted into these hyperspaces of spiritual evolution when really you're snared into a trap, just like the fake metaverse, right? And you start building BS stuff in the external world, like spaceships, to get to external planets where all of that is internal. And that should be the focus of the culture instead of an exoteric. You get a whole culture of exotericism when you build on the ego and the distinction of self. That's what happens. And that prevents evolution rather than promotes it. It's the wrong type of evolution, if you ask me. I mean, wrong, right, eventually it all gets, but who wants to go on a longer journey than fucking necessary to get where you gotta go? I always say, give me a Porsche. That wasn't me. That was actually one of my Sikh spiritual masters. I mentioned it before, of the light and sound meditation. It was his wife that used to say, not to be materialistic or nothing, but why wouldn't you want to get somewhere from point A to point B faster if you can? I mean, that's just one person's preference, I guess, because other people could deconstruct that and say, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. But the point is, in evolution as a human species, why take the long route? Why? Why would you do that? Right? Why would you take the long route when there's a shorter route, right? I'm sweating so much. It's really time for me to get off. And I have some wild rice in there that I'm about to throw down on. So, anyway, this is one of my longer videos. And I've shape-shifted several times into the crone and delivered some wisdom, or, I won't even, that's ego, but, just sharing knowledge, sharing GNO knowledge with you guys. And, so we'll talk about the fall of the ego, and again, how that prevents us. Ooh, the mirrored antichristic shadow, which is not really a power. It's an anti-power, but it's given to us, promoted to us as actual power, when it's the actual opposite. It's anti-power. And yeah. Well, I covered a lot. I should have an hour and 30 minutes. But anyway, okay. So if you stayed this long, I'm really impressed because I really shapeshifted and channeled a lot of stuff. But thank you for joining me. And again, I hope to go into the next phase of this particular topic on the next video, hopefully. I'll see you then. So until then, take care. Peace.